Well, if you thought this was just going to be another ho-hum, boring offseason for the Denver Broncos, missing the playoffs again, finishing under 500 again, you were wrong, and I was too, because everything just changed in our end-of-year press conference with Greg Penner, George Paton, and Sean Payton, and everything is back on the table. I'm back in my Russell Wilson jersey. We have so much news to break down because the Denver Broncos got great news today, and I have not felt this fired up after a end-of-year press conference since the Gary Kubiak one after we won the Super Bowl. And I thought, hey, we got a bunch of these to come, and we won 4 in a row with Simeon and then fell off, and that's when all this kind of began. But I truly am so stoked. I've been driving home from work every single year since the year that Pat Bowlen fired Mike Shanahan. Like, that's when they started streaming them on the internet. I remember I couldn't find a teaching job in Colorado. I was like freezing cold in the suburbs of Chicago around a bunch of Bears fans, and it was awful. I remember speeding home and like streaming it on my laptop and like, oh, finally feel connected to this team. This is awesome. And now the internet has made it to where we can watch this entire thing. We can digest it in all these ways. And you cannot honestly watch the video of Sean Payton and George Paton and Greg Penner and not just be jazzed that that is our triangle of owner, GM, and coach. And I think all this hate that that George Payton and Sean Payton have been getting is so over the top and wrong, and we got to dive into all of it. So big things that kind of came up today was first that all along this Russell Wilson stuff, the conversation, everyone was saying there were threats made and all of that kind of stuff. But what was emphasized over and over and over, that these were good faith talks, not about the injury, but about opening up his contract. And if you think about someone like even Peyton Manning his last year, he opened up his contract when he realized he wasn't playing at the same level he was of our first couple of years here. He opened up the contract and added in a ton of incentives and a cash bonus. He ended up in that Super Bowl year making just as much, but it affected our cap less. And so what you see here is this quote is what makes me just so geeked out and excited, is that Russell Wilson is open to returning to the Denver Broncos. Now, not only do you have like just that one piece of evidence, and sure, maybe he's just trying to save face, right? Well, the fact is, look at the other evidence that we have. Russell Wilson has had multiple times to blast this organization since his locker room conversation. He could have talked at the end of that Raiders game. The rumors are that he sat at his locker with his full uniform on for 40 minutes after the game. He didn't say a word. They asked if he wanted to talk. He didn't. He could have continued to blast us there. He could have like gone on and liked different teams on social media. He could have blasted us on social media. He could have done all those things, but instead, you see video of him at practice getting butt smacks from Sean Payton. You see him backing up and actually in the huddle, he was pumping up Stidham and Sutton. Like, you see that door isn't totally shut. And there have been a lot of people out there who I thought were crazy. James Marilat came out and said he didn't think that the door was shut. My own mom, you guys, I should have mom on Sports Talk Denver, but she texted me 2 days ago and said, Ben, I actually think Russell Wilson is our starting quarterback again next year. This whole thing has been trying to shake him up and get him to redo his deal. He's coming back. And I wrote back, Mom, there's less than a 0.01% chance that's true. But now everyone's saying it's true. And I think it could be. If you look at the fact, Russell Wilson is this how you want to leave a city? Do you want to leave Denver by being cut? Do you want to leave here by being embarrassed, by being benched for a guy that no one in the NFL knows? Or do you want to restructure your deal in a way that you can keep the most expensive house in the entire history of Denver real estate? There are ways now, since we have the Walton Penner Group, where you can front load Russell Wilson's deal if he agrees to open it up and renegotiate, where he could still almost hit the same amount of money, but have it count against the cap a whole lot less. And that's what we've been saying all along. I think Russell Wilson can be a good quarterback if you can flood his team around him with talent. And that's what I think Sean Payton thinks as well, that hey man, you cannot be an elevator. You cannot make this whole team better. But if you let us build a team around you by giving us more money, then it is possible. And so I think the fact is that George Paton coming out today and saying that, the fact that Russell Wilson didn't subtweet, didn't say anything on social media like, yeah, that's not the case. That is a very, very good sign. And I also think the other great news was yesterday, Sean Payton had a 30-minute meeting with Russell Wilson. I've been a part of a lot of firings in different positions, not myself, but I've seen it happen. And you do not have a 30-minute meeting with someone who is about to fire you and have it be cordial. Sean Payton was asked, like, how did it end? And he said, it ended great. And we said, it's not going to be a long drawn out process and we'll decide what we're going to do soon. And he said, if I thought that was the end, I would have told him goodbye. We'll see you later. And he didn't. So the door is open. I think the door is only open if he agrees to open up the contract in a way that lets us build around him. That's very exciting. And even if you say there's no way Russell Wilson ever plays here again, the reason this is good news on all fronts, it's good news if he opens up his contract and lets us build around him. That would be best case scenario as far as I'm concerned. The second best case scenario would be he leaves cordially in a way that we are able to trade him. He has a no trade clause right now. If we could trade him, it could help with some of that dead cap hit. Right now, he has no reason to waive that no trade clause because he could say, cut me and I'll go sign for a vet minimum with another team. They'll pay pennies on the dollar for me. You'll pay for me. And then that other team can build up around me. And I think he knows that would truly make him a villain here. If we're paying his whole salary for him to win a championship in Pittsburgh, you'd never be able to, I bet you his house goes unsold because like Colorado would protest and be like, we're not buying Russell Wilson's house. We're going to let that thing sit vacant, get every penny back from that guy. So I think those are both absolutely great scenarios that either we're trading him because he's waiving the no trade clause, and that's going to help with a dead cap hit, or he's going to open up the contract, let us front end it with a bunch of cash bonus. We have the most cash rich owner in sports with Greg Penner, who can front load that entire contract and have it not hit against our cap. That would be incredible. Other big things that just warmed the cockles of my heart was you just look at this ownership group and you look at ownership groups like the Tennessee Titans that just fired Vrabel, and they fired him when they probably could have done the work to trade him, but they said, oh, it's too complex. We don't have time for it. Like, that owner does not actually, her number one priority is not the Tennessee Titans. Like, it's kind of a cool showpiece, and it was her husband's thing or her dad's thing, and she just carry on the legacy. You could have Jerry Jones, who thinks he knows football and is over-involved and doesn't actually make good moves. He just makes splashy moves. You could have the Panthers owner who throws drinks on fans. You could have Jim Irsay, who's getting pulled over for DUIs and popping pills. You could have, the list goes on. You could have Robert Kraft, who's doing stuff that Deshaun Watson is doing. The fact is, we have the owner of the richest company in the history of the world who figures out systems, and those systems translate. Like, you very rarely are you successful in just one area of your life and then you're a total mess up in every other area. The skills that it takes to run a Walmart and make it the biggest company in the world translate here. Like, the lessons you learn about managing people, the lessons you learn about hiring and firing and merchandise and all of that, those translate. And we have this amazing triangle of the richest owner in sports with Condoleezza Rice on that board, Sean Payton, who's a Super Bowl winning quarterback coach who has gotten more out of less than any coach. And then we have George Paton, who's one of the best evaluators of talent that there is. Like, he kills it in the draft every year. And so you got to feel really good about that. And then also that this isn't a win later kind of thing. They want to win now. Like, you heard Greg Penner literally say, I want to make sure our fans understand. I hear their frustrations. I get it. When they were 1-5, he talked about him having sleepless nights. And I just don't think there's a lot of owners who that is true of. It's very, very different. You see, these three guys are working incredibly well together, and we got to feel excited about that. I just think that's big, big, big. Other thing is that if we do end up having to do the worst case scenario, which is that dead cap hit, we know that the Broncos are already formulating a plan for that. We have a great capologist who figures out exactly what moves need to be made. We could do things where if we do have to cut Russ and eat that dead cap money, we could sign Pat Surtain to an extension now with that front-loaded money and end up having that help us with the cap. There's just a lot of things that we can do to make the biggest dead cap hit of all time not quite as gut-punching as I felt when I first read it. So that feels feeling really, really good about that. Great news on the door is open. This thing is not over. The initial reach out about Russell's deal was all about being creative. And I think that word is an interesting word, that this wasn't about cutting. This was about, hey, can we be creative? And to me, I think that last year deal for Peyton Manning, let's be creative and find a way to win a Super Bowl with you as our quarterback. That's what they want. And that's what Russell Wilson wants. Like, he does not want to leave here a defeated man. And obviously he wants his money, but there are ways to get your money. There are ways where you, the owner of the biggest company in the history of the world, says to you, like, is that a person you want to leave on bad terms with? I think you want to maintain that relationship if you're Russell Wilson. That's not a bridge you want to burn. And saying no to a trade, that's burning a bridge with one of the wealthiest people in the world. That's not what you do when you are an uber elite, uber talented person like Russell Wilson. So I feel literally excited. Like, I'm really in on these Broncos for next year and for the years to come. There's so much more to break out. We got rumors of new uniforms, new stadium out by DIA, so much to break down. Make sure you're subscribed. You do not want to miss it. And Broncos country, let's ride.